Hey, everybody. Happy Thursday.
Oh. Hope everybody is doing well. Today, we're going to do our quick live on finding your brand identity online.
So, in this week's episode of the True North Consulting Live, as you know, we search out pretty high and low, far and close to find very special guests to bring to you to speak to you about about things that are unique and special that will hopefully offer you some value in your business. And so today, all the way from the great state of New York, we have Tamara Srdanovic, who is a web designer and graphic design specialist, to just share some thoughts and maybe some tips about how to use graphic design and that sort of thing to help your business. So welcome, Tamara.
Thank you so much, Randy and Hilary. So happy to be here. Yeah, we are here, from New York, and the graphic design business is quite interesting these days. We have daily calls from all sorts of businesses, and they're asking about how to go, in which direction to go when it comes to their brand identity, and especially with the year behind us, 2020 was quite interesting. So we are asking ourselves also, like, where is this going to go to? How do we help businesses? And it's really important to strategize, to figure out what really worked for them in the past year, especially since a lot of businesses maybe just started their online presence last year. That's what's happening here in New York with some of our clients. They relied upon a location. So they had a brick and mortar store, and they had maybe zero or minimal online presence. And now they're realizing that, hey, it's not such a bad thing. They maybe didn't make as much money from the brick and mortar, but they pivoted, the famous pivot online, and they're seeing interesting numbers. And this is where we come in. We're helping everybody from the very on start, like businesses who are just starting out to somebody who is well established, and we help them with their brand voice, with their visual identity, the whole branding. And what it really means when we say brand is how others perceive you. Everything goes into that play: your logo, the color scheme, the whole visual, the website, social media, all of it. So when somebody thinks about your brand, what stands out, what comes to mind, right? For the famous businesses, like when you say Nike, everybody's like, oh yeah, the swoosh, like the famous logo. But also, what does the company stand for? They know it's a sport, it's athletic. They know the general look and feel of it, right? So it's quite distinguished. That's what we want for all these new businesses. We want them to have such a strong brand that when somebody mentions that specific name, it comes to mind like, oh yeah, we know this, we have seen it, maybe on social media, or maybe even somewhere live, like somewhere in a print or in local stores.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, we have a lot of probably newer business owners in our group here. I guess if you were to think about the top two or three, maybe the mistakes that have made, or the best tips that you can offer someone in terms of starting to quantify what their brand is. I mean, how do they get started? Do they start with copy? Do they start with color? Do they start with, whatever? For example, we've built ours around being the True North Consulting with the compass to help a business find its true north. And so that's where we've kind of built all of our stuff around. So how does a new business owner start to digest and start to process that way?
Oh yeah, we have a whole conversation. Like, we have a series of interviews where the brand new business owner is basically telling us their story. What is the story behind them, and what are they trying to achieve? So you guys are so good, because your social media posts are very recognizable. There is always that true north, but also there is like a look and feel that I can recognize it on my feed. I'm like, oh, this is the true north post. And that's something that every business owner wants. Like, what do we want to convey? What is the message behind this whole business? Like, why are we doing this? What do we want our clients to kind of grab hold of? So before we even start, that interview is so important. You know, we're taking notes, we are asking very specific questions, and in the process, we're developing a strategy. So if somebody is in a business, like they have, let's say, organic skin line, right? Everything, the whole look and feel needs to convey that message. So even before you know what the business is about, if you see their logo, if you see their color scheme, you can kind of guess, right? You can guess and say, I think this is something holistic, something to do with this, maybe cosmetics, right?
Right.
A lot of times we can guess that there is like a food industry because they love the color red, right? So they're like everything, all like if you think McDonald's, Wendy's, In-N-Out Burger, like they all kind of incorporate color red. There is that color theory behind it, right? It's gonna kind of open up the appetite, but also it stands out. When we think holistic organic, usually combination of white, green, those colors found in nature. Um, there are examples where people go completely left field, you know, and nobody can guess. Nobody can guess what the business stands for. That's a miss, you know. That's not a good idea. We don't want people to perceive something that's not serving our purpose.
Yeah, having a lot of natural earthy tones and colors that would typically go towards food or skincare, and then have somebody selling car batteries or
Yeah.
that sort of thing that just doesn't go together. That's a great point.
Yeah, like technology, you know, people who are into software, and then you just kind of miss the whole point. But it really goes beyond that. Like it goes into what is also the messaging, you know, what is that story that we want to convey. If you think, let's say, really famous one, Tesla, right? If you check out their website, they have added this whole section on testimonials, but they're video testimonials. So when you think Tesla, everybody's thinking like, oh, Elon Musk. But if you go to their website, you know, you will see solar panels, cars, all these different innovations. And then they have entire section just like hundreds and hundreds of video testimonials, and people are sharing their stories. And that's what they want. Like they want their message is like they're innovating for the whole mankind, for everyone. They want all of these innovations to be accessible.
But I think the thing about the Tesla logo, and same with like Nike, and I'm trying to think of somebody else, the logo can stand by itself without you ever having to like write Tesla. Like everybody knows the T is Tesla. Everybody knows the swoosh isn't that. Like, have you?
Yeah.
I mean, Nike almost never writes Nike under the swoosh anymore. And it's because everybody knows
right?
it.
Apple.
Yeah, Apple.
Oh, it's so obvious. Well, that's really interesting because brand new business owners sometimes go into a very complicated look, which is not a good idea. We want to make it as simple as possible, and then as designers, it's actually more difficult to create the simpler, elegant design that's conveying the message. You know, so that's where we have a lot of long conversations, because sometimes people bring in, it's like a whole elaborate, it looks like a beautiful painting, really. And I'm like, hey, this is wonderful to hang up on a wall. This is not
Right,
a
it doesn't
logo, right?
translate.
It's not going to be recognizable. We have to think about the size. What about the business card, right? Tiny little space of paper. Can we fit everything in there? Is it going to be legible? Can you really read what it says? I have seen some interesting designs where you cannot even tell what the words are saying, because they're, in order to fit onto a regular business card, they had to really kind of shrink it. It was a disaster.
That's an interesting point that you just brought up. You see a lot of women will use fancy cursive font that's almost illegible. And it kind of alienates like half the market, because they're looking at it like, oh, that must only be for women. So I don't need that brand.
You have to be able to read it, you know, and it just like in fashion, in design, we have seasons, right? And like what is interesting, what is fashionable this season. So this past year, we see a lot of cursive and gold. Gold is notoriously difficult to print. Like you have to have a really good printing vendor that's going to use right, you know, and actually you have to splurge more if you want to use the gold foils and in order for it to look just right. So that's sometimes we have to crush, you know, our brand new clients expectations when they see it printed out. They're like, oh, it doesn't look good because the color really doesn't translate. So then they're happy to change the design and let's go somewhere else and let's do something else. It has to be clean and the whole idea is, what are we trying to do with this design, right? So we want people to recognize our business, to stand out from the crowd, and also we just want to convey it across all platforms. So if somebody goes on your website and then they also maybe find you, they click on your Facebook, is it going to be along the same lines or is it completely different, right? Like sometimes you can have a website that's a little bit outdated. That's okay, that happens, but let's get it up to this brand new level. Let's keep everything as cohesive as possible, you know. And it shouldn't be like a big deal, right? And that's why finding a studio, like finding a group to work with, it makes everything so much easier. Which is another problem we find. Sometimes businesses have a logo, let's say from another designer, there is a logo. And then somebody else created like a color scheme they want to go with. And then a third person did the website. It did not incorporate logo or colors. It's completely different, you know? And they come to us for print. And we're like, okay, well, you know, what do we do? Because it's all over the place, 3 different directions. So it's not going to serve their purpose well. They want that print to also stand out. So sometimes you have to have those hard conversations, like let's bring everything up on the same page. In a sense, I think that's why brand new businesses have that luxury of a clean slate. You know, they're starting from scratch, they're starting from zero. I find that very exciting. I'm like, yeah, you have that clean slate. You don't have to worry about, you know, what do I do with those 1,000 followers on Instagram and they're used to pink scheme and now I'm switching to green and white. Like, what's gonna happen? And they're gonna drop me. No, let's start from zero and let's build from there, right? And finding a good team to work with, it's really, really phenomenal. Like that's what's needed. And I know you both of you are kind of on that page with the OBM, right? Like what do you get from people who are asking you, why do we need to work with you and what's the benefit of that, right?
Yeah, at the end of the day, for us, much like you, is we know what lane we swim in and we know what we're good at and we know when it's ideal or in some cases necessary to find another expert such as yourself to incorporate the strategy that the client we have, whatever that may be, that can support our vision, the client's vision, and in this case, like a third person, whether it's graphic design or copywriters or Facebook ads and some of those things. And I think the important thing for me or us has always been with you is, you know, anybody for the most part can create a graphic, right? You can go to Canva and you can make things and you can pick colors and you can do whatever. And anybody can write things and put out content or post. But I was always impressed with you and your approach to the strategy that you talked about a few minutes ago, in that sometimes you have to have the tough conversation, and whether it's a new business or existing, they come in with their mind in a certain place, like they think they have a direction, but they don't realize that it doesn't work. And the example I'll give you kind of makes sense. Because many years ago, I decided that I, without any experience or knowledge how to do this whatsoever, would draw out and build or plan for a house that I wanted to have built, right? So I had all the cool rooms and downstairs and the second level and how it opened up and the stairs went this way. And it was a fantastically designed house on paper. And then I went to the builder that we were getting ready to hire and I said, I'd like to do this. And he goes, well, you can't do that because the way you have this design, the upstairs can't properly be supported by the first level. And I was like, well, darn it, what the heck? So we ended up selling the property that we bought a house down the street. So
that's such a good example. I love that. That's like, yeah, 'cause sometimes we have in our mind what we want, and you know, coming down from that cloud can be a little bit hard, but in the long run, it saves you money. So I think, you know, all the businesses shouldn't be afraid to hear that. And they should really be open to hear that gentle criticism, because in the long run, what do we want, right? We are all in the business of sales. So do we want to like stick with our guns and like say, no, I want this painting to be my logo? Or do we want to make it functional and elegant? And really, the point of it is to catch the eye of the client and to really convey our message. So we are saving money in the long run by hiring specialists. You know, and the same thing with the OBM. You know, if you want to save money in the long run, you need a person that's going to be there. And actually, you need to start building your team earlier rather than later. You know, I was just talking to somebody about what you guys are doing. I'm like, we need you to convey that message even more. Like, when do we start? You know, when do we start expanding the team beyond just one person or like a family, a husband and wife? And like, when do you add that extra person? As soon as possible, right away, because saving that person is going to save you time so that you can do what you're doing best, and they're going to do what they're specialists in, and everybody is happy. You know, everybody prospers, everybody is super happy.
yeah, that's exactly right. We couldn't agree more that we recommend it as early as possible. In fact, we would almost argue sooner than you think you're ready and sooner than it's possible. Make that investment, because the clients that end up hiring us typically have themselves so stretched out. They're working, 18, 19-hour days, holding it together barely. And so there is no time for them to be a visionary owner and to create additional sales and better strategy, because they are right in the mix all day, every day. And so they have a sense of relief when they spend money, because now their business runs more efficiently and it runs more profitably, and ultimately they're in a position to grow and scale. So you're absolutely right.
It just makes sense, you know. And I think like if because you mentioned you have some newer businesses in the group, I think that would be probably number one thing. Like, think about who you need as your team members and start right away. And it can be, it can be a VA to start, like maybe, 20 hours, 10 hours, 20 hours a week. But those 20 hours means you can use those 20 hours to focus on your job, whatever the specialty of that person is. I think getting some financial investment in the beginning to start the brand right pays off 1,000%, like in the long run. When you look at it, everybody who didn't do that, they will say, oh, I wish I found you guys earlier. And sometimes they do calculation, like how much money they spend here and there. And when you really calculate and you add it all together, it comes up as a higher sum than if they started with a team from day one. It's just, it's so important. Yeah.
Especially branding and logo, because you can tell like when people made the logo themselves or if somebody else made it. And I think it like reflects strongly on like how long you've been doing this and how well you do it, and like, can you afford to hire somebody else? You can see all that. And especially with like Instagram and social media, when you're using branding and logos and like you're using one color on Facebook and a different color on Instagram, and you're printing in purple and like none of it matches, like it's not cohesive. So it's not like what you were talking about on ours. You can clearly tell it's ours on everything because the colors are always the same. The font is the same, 2 fonts.
Yeah, and on the website. So if somebody goes to your website, they know exactly where they are. It's not a confusion like, oh, what is this now, right? But it's like having somebody just come up with a logo. I think that's the mentality approach. It's the mindset. Like, do I invest in this later? And everybody I spoke to, like in this last 2 months, they're saying, oh, I'm just thinking I'm thinking when I reach this next level, then I'm going to invest in my brand, which is really a mistake. You know, we want to get it from the start. And actually, it all falls into place. You have the team, you have the vision, you have your time to do your expertise. And if we align everything right, the whole strategy, what happens? You know, they have plenty of new business, they have new clients, and they're really jumping to brand new levels in a much faster pace. We have some clients we've been working with like since 2012, and then we had a few clients, like the brand new clients, maybe in the past year. Unfortunately, some businesses had to close because of 2020. You know, just they couldn't do the brick and mortar at all, and they were not ready to do anything online, unfortunately. But then we also have everything in between, and it's interesting how different pace, like you can look at the numbers, and the ones who invest later, you know, in their website, in a logo, you can just tell, like, wow, this could have been done in 1 year or 6 months. You know, why wait? Like, why stretch it out? We really need to get to that point much faster.
I think that's like everything in life, though. So many people are afraid to jump, right? To jump, to hire somebody, to spend the money, to leave their job, to.
You know, you made me think about something there that is another just potentially relatable story. Is, you know, I look at what you just said from an investment in your website, for example, or your branding, that much like starting your retirement account, you know, financially. So if you took $50,000 and put it into a retirement account when you're 20 years old or 21 years old, and another person took the same $25,000 and didn't start putting it into a retirement account until they're 50 years old, the person who's 21 is going to have 2 or 3 times the money because of that growth over time. And that's much like what you just described, by getting that branding out early and getting the return on that investment sooner rather than later. Instead of waiting until you're 50 to start saving for retirement, start your business the same way. And I think that's a great point.
Exactly. And that person who started later, they're going to say, I wish I knew this when I was 21. I wish I did it earlier, right? And every single business owner, they said to us, like, oh, we wish we found you earlier. We just didn't know. You know, we thought it's not a big deal. And I think that's why we're having this conversation, you know, to spread the knowledge. Like, hey, if you're just starting out, or if you're pivoting from brick and mortar and you're just starting your online presence right now, the time is now, and you want to surround yourself with a team, or have professionals do their part of the job. And even if that means investing a little bit more at the start, it's really paying off in the long run. And not even that long of a run. I mean, like, even in the first year, you see the difference.
Yeah, completely agree. You know, and I think people are going to have questions as we wrap this up. Mm-hmm. You know, is there some things that maybe some guidance? Do you have some sort of a consultation? Do you have a way that people can contact you, that sort of thing?
Definitely. We have, we're going to type up the website. It's bgnydesign.com. And for your group, we have specials. So I was thinking for 2 people, because 1 is never enough. So if we have 2 businesses, they need to be established businesses, meaning they don't have to have online presence, but they need to have an established concept, right? So not like, oh, I'm thinking about doing this in 10 years. No, like something they're working on right now, and it's actually established business, established concept. But they don't have to have a website. They don't have to have a logo. They don't have to have any of the visuals. So if they want, from that spectrum all the way to completely established business that is thinking about switching up, maybe refreshing, doing something brand new. So I can offer them up to 60 minutes. You know, we can have 45 or 60 minutes conversation, no strings attached. It's an analysis of what they're having so far, and basically to get them started, like, what is the roadmap? And they can, so if we have more than 2 people interested, we can do a random draw, just to be fair. And maybe, I don't know how many people usually watch on replay, maybe give them a week. Let's give everybody like a week or 2. And at the end of 2 weeks, we'll just do a random draw. Otherwise, if anybody has a quick question, I'm always happy to connect, because that can maybe save them some time in the long run. So we can have a free 15-minute consultation. I'll jump into the comments later, and I can post a link for that. But otherwise, they can just visit the website, and I'm really happy to connect. I'm also in the group, so they can DM as well,
Exactly. Whatever's easiest, right?
Email, send mail.
Well, thank you so much. That's a very generous offer. Thank you for doing that. We're very appreciative of you taking some time out to come and hang out with all of us. And
thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure. It really flew by. It's always
that's always
interesting people and interesting topics. It's always fun.
Exactly.
Well, have a good evening. Thanks everybody for joining us, and thanks again, Tamara.
Thank you. Have a wonderful evening. Bye, Randy. Bye, Hilary.
Bye.
Bye.